Front and Center. Front and Center. A focus on important and significant developments affecting the lives of Filipinos, not only in the Philippines, but also those living and working around the world. Join us in Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good day, welcome to Front and Center, where we focus on developments in the Philippines, as well as legislation that provides policies and directions that strives to promote a better economy for the country. Issues that concern the welfare and well-being of every Filipino. So all of these and more will be Front and Center. You can watch this program live on our Facebook page, that's Radyo Pilipinas World Service, and you can also hear us live on audio streaming. That's on Evox PBS receiver app. So join us for another edition of Front and Center with your host, Jerome Toledo.
Front and Center. Front and Center. Here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Before anything else, we would like to say here that there's an upcoming event coming from Bulacan as President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. will attend or foresee the launching of the Metro Pacific's Fresh Farm. That's first and largest greenhouse facility that's located in San Rafael, Bulacan, that will be launched this morning. So that greenhouse is operated by the Metro Pacific Agro Ventures Incorporated. So that's a subsidiary of the Metro Pacific Investments Corporation that's headed by its president and chairman, that's Manuel V. Pangilinan. So that greenhouses that spans a total of 3.5 hectares that aims to transform local vegetable production through innovative and tech-driven farming. So still in its initial phase, the MPFF is expected to produce 500 metric tons of fresh produce annually, significantly surpassing traditional farms in yield and stability. So that greenhouse will utilize Israeli technology. The greenhouse reduces water and land use by 90%, minimizing chemical inputs, and ensures a year-round production of high-quality vegetables. So in turn, this greenhouse will help the agriculture sector, particularly in producing the high quality vegetables. So that's MPFF initiative addresses supply instability and high input costs, providing a reliable source of produce for businesses and consumers. So the new brand, More Veggies Please, aims to deliver fresh, nutritious vegetables initially in Metro Manila with plans for nationwide expansion. So that event will be spearheaded by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. this morning. That's going to be at 10 a.m. This morning. Meanwhile, as he returned from the ASEAN Summit in 2025, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. has returned from Malaysia, where he joined with other ASEAN leaders in the two-day ASEAN Summit and related summits in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Upon his return, he outlined the accomplishments that underscore ASEAN's commitment to sovereignty, economic resilience, and regional cooperation. He also reiterated the stand of the Philippines on the West Philippine Sea. Besides the summit itself, he attended the ASEAN GCC Summit and the ASEAN GCC or Gulf Cooperation Council China Summit. So let's watch the arrival statement of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. from ASEAN Summit 2025.
Good morning. I have just attended the 46th ASEAN Summit and related summits here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The summit was once again an opportunity to discuss among our fellow ASEAN member states and partners how we should navigate our future together. This amidst the various geopolitical and economic challenges that we face nationally, bilaterally, regionally, and globally. We discussed significant international issues and emerging challenges that not only impact our nation, but also the entire region, especially the West Philippine Sea. I reaffirmed that the Philippines will continue to defend our sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction in the West Philippine Sea in accordance with international law. We continue to strengthen our partnerships with all countries who share our values and our commitment to peace and the rule of law. The leaders of ASEAN agreed to work as a whole towards the further advancement of ASEAN community building. We adopted the ASEAN Community Vision 2045, which sets out the future direction of ASEAN over the next 20 years, along with its accompanying strategic plans. We are collaborating with our partners to narrow development gaps and to promote inclusive growth, particularly for the marginalized, the underdeveloped, and vulnerable communities. We acknowledge the Complementarities Initiative, which maps the similar goals of the ASEAN Community Vision and the Sustainable Development Goals. We reaffirm the importance of the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia. And this is the code of conduct which governs the interstate relations in the region. To prepare our country and our region for the future, the economic front must also be developed. ASEAN continued to demonstrate resilience with a growth of 4.7% in 2024, higher than the global average. The leaders and I talked about the impact of the imposition of unilateral tariff measures, which pose a threat to a region as economically integrated as ours. We welcomed the establishment of the ASEAN Geoeconomics Task Force, which is an ad hoc specialized high-level advisory body which provides real-time analysis, strategic foresight, and actionable policy recommendations to support relevant ASEAN sectoral bodies. We reaffirmed ASEAN's collective commitment to a rules-based, open, inclusive, transparent, and non-discriminatory multilateral system. We strengthened our trade with external partners with upgrades in the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement, amendments in our free trade agreements, and utilization of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. We welcomed the issuance of the Joint Declaration on Economic Cooperation between ASEAN and the Gulf Cooperation Council. We look forward to its effective implementation. We welcome the progress in trade and customs, sustainable investment guidelines, mobilization of green financing, multilateral power trade, support to micro, small, and medium enterprises, and sustainable tourism, mining, and agriculture, among others. In line with the Philippines' commitment to the development of a common regional framework for ethical and responsible artificial intelligence aligned with ASEAN values, we noted the ongoing development of the Declaration on the establishment of the ASEAN Artificial Intelligence Safety Network. This is a crucial step to institutionalize AI safety, ethics, and governance principles. This economic development goes hand in hand with strengthening the socio-cultural community. We discussed the progress achieved and actions moving forward for education, green jobs, migrant worker rights, civil service, and health. We adopted the ASEAN Creative Economy Sustainability Framework, which is a roadmap for balancing economic growth, social inclusion, cultural preservation, and environmental sustainability. Once again, the ASEAN leaders and I had a fruitful interface with the representatives of ASEAN Youth, where I highlighted the Philippines' hosting of the 14th Senior Officials Meeting on Youth and the ASEAN Youth Climate Action and Disaster Resilience Conference in Manila. That was recently as part of the government's commitment to the young people of ASEAN. I also encouraged the youth representatives to harness the full potential of technology for the region's development while keeping an eye to the challenges that this new frontier brings, particularly on the misuse of information and artificial intelligence. On the sidelines of the summit, I took the opportunity to engage leaders to discuss bilateral cooperation in strategic areas of mutual interest. I met with the leaders of Lao PDR, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Kuwait. We reaffirmed commitment to strengthen bilateral relations and further advance cooperation on many fields of mutual interest, such as defense, maritime, trade, human resource and development, and education. I especially wish to note that we agreed to explore active ways to boost private sector investments. We expressed openness to cooperating on advanced technologies, AI, and the digital space. I emphasized that welfare, safety, and progress of Filipinos working and living overseas is of paramount importance to my administration. In all my bilateral engagements, one thing is clear. We have to continue to cooperate and to work together to navigate a future that presents us with many opportunities together with many challenges. The Philippine delegation and I are grateful to Malaysia, the chair of ASEAN this year, and our generous host for the successful 46th ASEAN Summit. As the 2026 chair of ASEAN, the Philippines looks forward to building on the gains of Malaysia's chairship and carry ASEAN forward as we navigate our future together. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga po.
And that was President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. To help us understand the importance of participation of President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. at the ASEAN Gulf Cooperation Council China Summit, which he participated yesterday. So we have on the line the foreign policy expert, Professor Lucio Pitlo III. Professor Lucio, thank you for joining us. This is Jerome Toledo of Radyo Pilipinas World Service.
Good morning, Jerome. Good morning to your listeners.
Okay, so President Marcos Jr. participated in ASEAN GCC China Summit yesterday. So what can the Philippines get from that meeting with those leaders?
Well, as we all know, we are living in a very complex global environment. And of course, the escalating tariff war between major economies like the US and China.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important for countries like the Philippines as a developing country to diversify its trade and economic partners. And this is where Gulf countries, where many of our fellow countrymen are working as OFWs. And the Gulf is also a major source of our energy. So diversifying our economic partnership, deepening our trade and economic linkages with countries in the Gulf is very important for us. China remains the country's largest trade partner. So despite of the differences or issues in the South China Sea, it remains an important actor in the country's economy. So it's very important to engage these two players, the GCC countries and China, for the country's continued economic growth.
Okay, but Middle Eastern countries, Professor Lucio, they somewhat strengthening their relations with the Western countries, such as the United States, as well as the Great Britain. So, what will be the stand of Middle Eastern countries when they are dealing with China?
Well, China is an emerging economic partner for GCC countries. China is a major buyer of energy that includes both oil and gas, coming from Gulf countries like Qatar or Saudi Arabia. And so it's also important for GCC to look into the future beyond oil, because commodities like oil and gas, they are finite resource. At a certain time, they will be exhausted. So countries like UAE, particularly Dubai, they are trying to improve tourism. They are going into technology. They are positioning themselves as investment hubs, and they're looking at China as one of the major partners to improve their infrastructure, to get tourism from China, as well as, of course, improve their manufacturing capacity. And so this is where complementarities. Gulf being major exporters of commodities, China major consumer, and at the same time, China is a major technology producer and increasingly technology solutions provider for other countries. So this is where the complementarity is very manifest.
Okay, I'm not certain, Professor Lucio, about this, but China seems to be participating in every summit, particularly this one, the ASEAN summit, as well as other regional summits that regional blocs are establishing. So, my question, Professor Lucio, so is China is ready to be another superpower? Because United States, as we know, is the world's superpower. So how China is going to be following the steps of the United States?
Well, it's expected because as the trade war between U.S. and China, and as the relations between China and the West, fray, encounter difficulty, especially in relation to say technology, investments, as well as trade. Then we would expect China to look for alternative markets, including in the global south. As we have seen in recent years, ASEAN has become the largest trade partner of China,
Mhm.
and both ASEAN and China are the largest trade partners of one another. And we also see China moving into the Gulf, to the Middle East, investing a lot in Africa, or even going to Latin America. And so we will see China looking into places where they can have alternative markets, and at the same time places to invest their money. And as relations with the West continue to encounter headwinds
Mhm.
because of security concerns, or because of the intensifying competition between major powers, especially between US and China, then we would expect this trajectory of China going into the South, the global South, like ASEAN and the Gulf countries. We would expect that trend to continue. And of course, that means that benefits between these regions and China would be two-way, in the
Mhm.
sense that global South countries will be able to
Mhm.
have access to more cheaper goods, and they will be able to improve their industrial capacity, upgrade their industries through Chinese technologies, Chinese solutions. And so for China, it's an opportunity for them to have access to larger markets, in the emerging and developing world, and be able to offshore some of their labor-intensive production, like in the textiles,
Mhm.
garments industry, because of the rising production costs in China. Of course, the automation and also the need to have access to more markets. We see some markets like in ASEAN and GCC trying to position themselves as alternative manufacturing hubs in order for certain Chinese enterprises, for instance, to use these regions as backdoors to still
Mhm.
be able to export to the U.S. And
Yeah.
so I think this is where the trend will deepen of China moving into these places, and of course the concerns about overcapacity, the ability of the local markets to
Uh-huh.
compete, with Chinese producers. This will be cause of concern also.
I see. Okay, Professor Lucio, President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. Emphasized in that summit the need for strict adherence to international law. So I would like to switch to another issue here. So, which is the UNCLOS, or the United Nations Convention of the Law of the Sea, to guarantee unimpeded commerce. And at the same time, as you mentioned about trading partnerships, because China is one of the leading trading partners of the Philippines besides United States. So how is this going to be different?
Well, of course, it's expected that the country would raise the issue of the rule of law. I think it's in reference to, of course, the peaceful settlement of disputes, the management of differences, and trying to, um, restraint and not to resort to the use of force or coercion
Mm-hmm.
in relation to flashpoints like the South China Sea or West Philippine Sea. So that's expected because the government position on that. And of course, next year the country will be the rotating chair of ASEAN.
Yes.
And I think the resolution of the sea, the South China Sea, will be high in the agenda. And so, as a small middle power country, it's very important for the Philippines to
Mm-hmm.
resort to legal means, peaceful means, to try to manage differences with big neighbors like China.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the reference to strict adherence to international law. And so, with predictable rules, this is very important whether in the security or economic fields. And because China is increasingly becoming a global superpower, it's very important
Mm-hmm.
to socialize China, to encourage China to abide by rules laid out in the international law. in relation to settlement of disputes or management of differences. So I think this is where the statement of the president is coming from.
Okay. All right. Mentioning about the code of conduct on the South China Sea, Professor Lucio. So, President Marcos Jr. Expresses or has said that he wished to have that COC to be accelerated so that there will be a uniform response regarding that issue. So, does China support this code of conduct on the South China Sea?
So far, the statements coming from Chinese officialdom seem to suggest that they're open to concluding the document at as soon as possible time. And I think the target for concluding the code of conduct would be 2026. That will be next year when we host the rotating chairmanship of ASEAN. So it's a big challenge for us to have that important document concluded. But at the same time, we also recognize that for some ASEAN members and for China, there are also other pressing issues like the economics, in relation to the escalating tariff war, the uncertainty about disruptions in the supply chains. And so I think other countries will also be pressing the Philippines as rotating chair of ASEAN.
Okay. Professor Lucio, so since next year, Philippines will host the ASEAN summit. So will China? Do you think China will participate in this, or will make a cooperative talks with the Philippines? Professor Lucio. Okay, I will try to establish our contact with Professor Lucio. So I'm down to. We will try to reestablish our line with Professor Lucio because I got disconnected. But we are talking about the next year's hosting of the ASEAN Summit, which will be hosted by the Philippines. That's going to be next year on 2026. And some issues are at stake, and that's going to be the code of conduct in the South China Sea, as well as investments and bilateral relations in some ASEAN countries. So I believe we don't have Professor Lucio on the line anymore. But anyway, we would like to thank Professor Lucio for taking this interview on the program. So with that, we conclude this edition of Front and Center here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Together with our production and technical personnel, this is your host, Jerome Toledo. Until next time, mabuhay, love the Philippines.
You have just heard and watched Front and Center. Front and Center. Join us again for another edition here on Radyo Pilipinas World Service. Front and Center.